Okay, so we're talking about Lillian Hellman and the play, A Children's Hour. And we talked about the fact that it was made into a movie in 1936 called These Three. Well, if you Turner Classic Movies tells us that the idea for the Children's Hour, the original idea for the play, was suggested to Lillian Hellman by Dashiell Hammett. Now, Dashiell Hammett was her companion for about 30 years of her life. Dashiell Hammett was also one of the best detective story writers of the 1930s, hardcore detective fiction. So if you like that, look up Dashiell Hammett and you'll be pleasantly surprised. He had read an anthology of true crime stories about two Scottish school teachers and suggested it to her. Now, there's no reference given in Turner Classic Movie Guide to this, but you can go to the Edinburgh News, and the Edinburgh News confirms the story about the two Scottish school teachers and states that a lawyer, William Roughhead, found transcripts from the 1809 trial in Scotland. And in the transcripts, he learned that these two Scottish school teachers were indeed charged with being for indecent behavior and for having a love affair, and Hellman would then take this true story and make it into a play. And while her play was viewed by thousands of people, the actual court case in 1809 was held in secret behind closed doors because it was considered such indecent behavior. The Scottish article also mentions the 1961 remake of the play into a film called The Children's Hour. Now, this is the one that I've made available to you online. And it was directed again by William Wyler, and he then stays more true to the play script in this film. Bosley Crowther's review from 1962 is available online, and he calls the film a cultural antique and says there's no way that we'd believe those kind of rumors today, and he rejects the film as being old-fashioned. What's interesting, and this was a review for the New York Times, so it's a big review. What's interesting about his review is the comment at the bottom, one of the first comments by a Kristen S. Valparaiso from Indiana. Now, her remark comes from 2012, August, if I remember correctly. And she says this: I disagree with this movie critic's opinion that the shock and horror expressed by the community was overdone and outdated. One need only look to the recent chicken restaurant chain Brouhaha to witness the current views of many in small-town Middle America. Apparently, New York City was more tolerant in 1962, when this review was published, than Middle America is in 2012. Now, that's her comment. And for those of you that don't know about the chicken restaurant Brouhaha, if you look up homosexuality in chicken restaurant, what you're going to find quite quickly is that the CEO, Dan Cathy, of the large chain, the very large chain, Chick-fil-A, I think, something like that, Chick-fil-A, publicly opposed same-sex marriage in June 2012, and that this created a lot of debate in the United States. What you will also find if you study gay studies, or if you get involved in that in any way, learning about the liberation movement for homosexuals, is that it would take until 1969, which is 7 years, well, 8 years after the film was produced and 7 years after Crowther's review, until the Stonewall riots. Now, the Stonewall riots is an inn called Stonewall Inn in New York City, in Greenwich Village, and this is where the liberation movement for gay rights is said to have started, or did start, in the United States. And what they were objecting to in the Stonewall Inn is that homosexuals could be arrested in the United States, but they could also be denied service. And so this is a very current topic for 2012 and 2013 in the United States. And the Stonewall Inn was a known gathering spot for drag queens, male prostitutes, young men who looked feminine and who could be bothered elsewhere or troubled elsewhere, and homeless youth. And there was a police raid, and for the first time these men, instead of going willingly with the police or just dispersing, they resisted, and they violently resisted for several days. And this is the beginning of the liberation movement for gays in America. So Bosley Crowther was not very well informed, but it is interesting to note his comments about the film. If we go back to the Timeline Theater Study Guide, it observes that Hellman herself insisted that the film wasn't about lesbians, but rather that it was about the tragic consequences of a lie. This is not to be confused with her rejection of homosexuality. It's more has to do with the fact that she didn't want it to be a lesbian play. She wanted it to be a play about the tragic consequences of lies, and one would assume about people interfering in the private lives of citizens, because she kept her own life quite private, or tried to. It was actually in the media quite a lot. Lee Schubert, again the manager of the Maxine Elliott Theater, worried that the play could land them in jail, and the guide confirms that he was right to worry about this, because in 1926 a play with two lesbian characters had been put up on Broadway, and the police had arrested the leading actors and shut down the play. In Hellman's play, they carefully don't use the word lesbian, and so this is one of the ways the cultural context, the time, sort of affects what is actually put into the play text. The word lesbian is not used, but the whisper of scandal follows the play everywhere it goes, and hence the ban in Boston, but also in Chicago, where the play couldn't be performed until 1953, and in London the play couldn't be performed in theaters at all, but was staged in private residences and in private clubs. And so that's some of the historical background for the Children's Hour, and some of the reasons why the play's references to their having an affair are more subtle than they would be today, and that the relationship is not well, if it was a lesbian play, that the relationship is not confirmed. But interestingly enough, what is confirmed in the play is, of course, that one of the characters does have feelings. Martha does have feelings for Karen, and that is confirmed at the end of the play, which is in itself interesting. Her feelings have never led to a relationship because Karen hasn't known about them, but she has had these feelings. And so the court case that results from in the play itself, and the scandal that results in the play itself, would then have a different meaning for Karen, whose relationship with Martha has not had these overtones of sexuality, or undertones of sexuality, versus for Martha, where they have had undertones because she has wanted something else. And so this play is very interesting to look at from the perspective of character motivation, because if you remember how Backwards and Forwards says we always should read the play and then we should know the end in order to look at, to be able to see what kind of motivations the actors need to put into their performance. Not to give it away, but so that they do their performance convincingly for how the play ends. The other thing that it tells us, that when we're looking at this play, we need to read not only Martha's character and Karen's character, but also the character of Carden. Karen's fiance. If we read the end, if we know how the play ends, that should then affect how we read his character from the beginning. Alright, I'm going to stop there because I'm a little bit afraid that it's going to cut out again.